Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. Today marks the 76th anniversary of the sinking of the Third Australian hospital ship Centaur. The merchant Navy vessel was attacked at 4 a.m. on the 14th of May, 1943, while on her second run from Sydney to Port Moresby. The freshly painted white hull was illuminated by powerful spotlights, and clearly visible around the hull was a thick green band, broken in several places by large red crosses. Whilst most people were asleep, a torpedo from a Japanese submarine struck the Centaur, hitting the oil fuel tank, which ignited in a massive explosion. Many of those not killed in the explosion or resulting fire were trapped as the ship started to go down bow first and then broke in two. In just 3 minutes, Centaur was gone. Of the 332 on board, including the civilian crew and medical personnel, only 64 survived. The following afternoon, an American destroyer, USS Mugford, assisted in recovering survivors. Occurring just 2 years after, Centaur had rescued survivors of the German auxiliary cruiser Cormoran after it had been struck by the HMAS Sydney, and the loss of the Centaur deeply shocked Australia. For many, this was further evidence that Australia faced a brutal and uncompromising enemy. Many Australians feared an invasion, and this attack was all too close to home. The Centaur came to symbolise the courage of Australian women in war and became a reminder of all Australians who served in war and have no graves but the sea. Importantly, she has also become a symbol of the determination to win the war. News of the attack resonated around the world. The wreck of Centaur was not found until late 2009, some 66 years after its sinking, lying at a depth of more than 2,000 metres off the southern tip of Moreton Island in southeast Queensland. A national memorial was held in Brisbane in 2010, attended by the then Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd. We warmly welcome the family and friends of the Centaur victims, and today we warmly welcome the family of Sergeant William Oscar McDougall, who was one of the victims of the Centaur and whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge members of the AHS Centaur Association, Mr. Peter Everly, representing the ACT branch, Return in Services League of Australia, and representatives of Legacy Australia. We also welcome members of the Kookaburra Kids Foundation, including Mr. Richard Ralph, who are in attendance this evening. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors, as well as students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, St Raphael's Central School from Cowra. From Victoria, Ashwood High School, Maffra Secondary College, and Surrey Hills Primary School. And from Western Australia, John Tonkin College, Mandurah. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force, and they provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you're able, please stand for the national anthem.
Party, A10, Chen. Party, present, out.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is earth by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Party, shoulder, out.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Out.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant William Oscar McDougall. William McDougall was born on the 21st of September 1911 in the Sydney suburb of Redfern, the son of James and Catherine McDougall. By the time the Second World War had been declared, he had married Anne Galt and they were living in the Sydney suburb of Lilyfield. On the 28th of March 1938, they had a daughter, Anne. William was working as a hospital attendant, so when he enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 4th of June 1940, he was a natural fit for a role in a field ambulance unit. After the founding of the 212 Field Ambulance in November, he was assigned to that unit, joining them at Cowra in January of 1941. In March, he began the train journey to Darwin, where he was appointed a specialist nursing orderly. During training in the Northern Territory, his unit provided medical support for the 23rd Brigade, participated in the construction of 5 small medical hospitals, and assisted sappers and pioneer assault units. On the 14th of July 1941, McDougall's wife gave birth to a boy named James Swan McDougall. The following year, McDougall was promoted to acting corporal in June and acting sergeant in August. Later in August, he was admitted to hospital, suffering from a malady that was variously diagnosed as fibrositis or myositis, both inflammatory conditions. He rejoined his unit in November 1942, and after a few weeks of being detached for duty to a training school, he returned to have his rank of sergeant confirmed. In mid-January 1943, McDougall set out on the train journey from Darwin to Sydney, and on the 11th of May, embarked on the hospital ship Centaur. With the beginning of hostilities with Japan, it had become clear that the 3 hospital ships currently serving Australia would not be able to operate in the shallow waters typical of maritime Southeast Asia. Centaur was a Scottish-built vessel that had been launched in 1924 as a combination passenger liner and refrigerated cargo ship. In order to serve its new role, Centaur was refitted with an operating theatre, dispensary, 2 wards located on the former cattle decks, and a dental surgery, along with quarters for 75 crew and 65 permanent Army medical staff. On the 12th of May, Centaur sailed, transporting the 212 Field Ambulance to New Guinea. Before dawn on the 14th of May 1943, Centaur was torpedoed and sunk by a Japanese submarine off North Stradbroke Island in Queensland. The majority of those aboard died in the attack. 64 survivors were discovered 2.5 days later. The incident resulted in public outrage, but it wasn't until the 1970s that the probable identity of the attacking submarine became public. Today, despite an abundance of theories and the discovery of the wreck of the Centaur on the 20th of December 2009, the reason for the attack is still unknown. William McDougall's name is listed in the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant William Oscar McDougall, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Party, shoulder,
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember that.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Party. Outwards. Turn. Party. Quick.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrubber Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. That in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen and students, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.